Or the old Dallas opening titles, one or the other. Yes.
Or see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Yeah.
Now we need the rest of the Brady family to fall into Castellano.
Sure can.
We are live, folks. We are live.
Hello.
So let's say hello to the human beings watching. Hello, human beings watching. My name is Mitch Benn. I will be. You may know me from such things as you don't know me, and I shall be your moderator today for the Q&A with the creators of the forthcoming graphic novel, if we're still calling them that these days, Madi, Once Upon a Time in the Future. We have, primarily from the world of movies and now in the world of comic books, Mr. Duncan Jones. And primarily from the world of comic books and now in the world of live streaming, the great Alex de Campi.
Hello.
Hello.
I feel like we're on Jeopardy or something. I'll take graphic novels for 100, please, Mitch.
Okay. What's grabbing? It's Alan Moore. You know the answer is Alan Moore. Whatever the question, probably Alan Moore. You know who? Alan Moore. Anyway, yes, we are here to do a Q&A. So, in expectation of some cues from you at home, which I will be able to see and will be able to forward to Duncan and Alex, I'm going to come up with some cues myself just to get the ball rolling. So, guys, this is the third and I'm told final installment in what I guess we can call Duncan's Mooniverse, which began with the movie Moon, which was Duncan's first feature. What was the movie? Was it 2008? Was that when Moon was?
Released 2009, but yeah, we made it in 2009.
2009, or something like that. And then we had the Netflix movie Mute, which was what, 2018?
Yeah, yes, I think you're correct. I think early 2018 is when that came out.
Which was a kind of loosely tied in sequel to Moon. There was like one scene that kind of knitted them together. And now we have the third installment, which is being produced as a comic book graphic novel. Let's go on comic books. Like Madi, Once Upon a Time in the Future. Now, from what I read, it went up as a Kickstarter a few weeks ago. You made all your money in the first couple of hours, which was nice. So it was a go. And I read from the blurb on the Kickstarter that this is from an original screenplay by Duncan. So was the original plan for this to be a third movie?
Yes. I mean, that's what it was written for. And I think, Moon, Mute, and Madi, although they're very tangentially connected, it was always sort of going to be more of a collection of stories in a shared future rather than one continuing story. So they're very much standalone films. Yeah. Two films and one graphic novel. Madi itself is quite epic in scale. It's a globe-trotting science fiction extravaganza. So as far as making it as a movie, I think the clout and budget that would be required to do such a thing is pretty huge. So fortunately, I was able to work with Alex here to bring in some of the people that both of us admire in the comic art world to help tell the story in this really unique way.
I've seen the list of artists; it's mind-boggling. So, Alex, I read again that you're adapting Duncan's original screenplay, but obviously you don't get Alex de Campi if you just want to transcribe it into a different format. So, I'm assuming that there's a fair bit of creative input coming from you.
I mean, the story's really solid, so I really love doing adaptation work because I have a lot of my own work. Like I have plenty of my own comics, and that's one of the joys of comics is there's not this 10-year gap between being able to do your own project, as there often is with film, around doing great projects for other people. You can do something like call up a friend, and within a year you have a nice 72-page graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And you can use that as a way of exploring different genres and stuff like that. And what I really liked about Duncan's project and the whole Mooniverse in general was I saw him like, there's this near future universe, and rather than doing the same thing over and over again with it, which I think unfortunately a lot of people want, like a lot of people, like you do a thing and then people just want you to do the same thing. It's like, just play the hits. Don't play the new album, just play the hits. So they wanted Duncan to do more of these small noir kitchen sinky sci-fi stories like Moon. And Duncan, having done that, was like, well, maybe I should scratch another itch now and do another thing. And so you have Mute, which is this wonderful sort of Berlin noir. And then Madi, which is much more this kind of like Terminator 2, great big American 80s action film type of feel to it. And a lot of what I did was structural, not in terms of changing the structure of the film, but in terms of creating a formal way for it to exist as a graphic novel that could be drawn by different people. And the reason we went with different people was this thing wouldn't be out for 5 years if we found one person, because the sort of art that we'd be looking for would be someone who'd be booked up for 2 years. This would take another 2.5 years for them to draw. And the structure of the story, because it's a road trip, allowed us to give it to different artists and have each artist own a particular location. So
Right.
the change in artist for the change in location feels very organic and almost, I feel it really adds to the story. I always use James Stokoe as an example because I love his work. He's got this very kind of frantic line. He does crowd scenes well. There's a lot of detail. Like, you look at his works, and if you put him on the right thing, it feels like you just had a lot of speed, basically. You're looking at it like, oh, everything is a lot now. And we put him on the scene that happens in a casino that's stretched over the Grand Canyon. And right after doing some stuff with Pia Guerra, who's this wonderful, clean, superb. She was the creator of Y: The Last Man, along with Brian Vaughan, even though they're not credited here for the TV show. Bad TV. No biscuit. She had this incredibly peaceful, like real character work to work on the relationship between the three main characters. And then you turn the page, and then there's this casino, and there's Stokoe, like just absolutely nailing this kind of gambling addiction, too many people around you, lots of noise environment. Like, it's perfect. You know,
he's like a double espresso. As soon as you hit that page, it's like, ah.
And so what Duncan and I did is I took the screenplay away, and I should have gone and gotten it. I drew all over it. Last summer up to Maine, because I actually have that. You know how people say I'm going to go away to a cottage up, in the middle of nowhere on the coast and write? I actually do that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
solar power, well water. It's great. And
Got snowed in there once, and I thought, I've seen this movie. Yeah.
So I did the adaptation on paper on the left, printed the screenplay out, did my breakdowns on the left-hand page to Duncan's screenplay on the right-hand page. And that got like, when the page turns were, how many panels per page, when the sections ended, and so forth. And then I added them, and then I put them in a Word doc, and those breakdowns, which are basically what happens per page, became a script, which is what happens per panel.
Gotcha.
And then that got put into a Google Doc about every 10 to 20 pages, and Duncan would look at it on the left coast, and he would then, tweak things or say, what about this? Or actually the point of this particular sequence, I really need this to come across. I mean, his point was pretty clear. Like, I don't think I missed the boat too often, but every so often he'd be like, let's just turn this a little bit. Did I add a lot of dialogue to it? No. I mean, I added the stuff that would be improv on set, basically, like background dialogue. If I felt like there needed to be a little more in the beginning of a scene to set the environment, I'd have some tertiary characters saying some things, and that was about it. I had a couple of design ideas. That was really it.
I mean, one thing which you presumably would add, unless you're not having them, and I actually found that there seems to be less of this in comic book in general these days than when I was a kid. I don't know what you call the sort of, the square box in the top right-hand corner of the frame that does the exposition. You know what I mean? Because you don't get those in a movie script unless there's like narrator VO. So
comics either. I do sometimes. I mean, I have done comics that are almost all captions.
Right.
It varies on the story. Like, there are some films with a lot of. I mean, Fight Club had essentially a lot of captions. This is Jack's upset stomach and things. So, Duncan's story didn't need that, and we could frame it in a way that we didn't necessarily like. my work tends to feel really cinematic anyway. And I think one of the reasons Duncan and I work together pretty well was that when I write a comic script, it uses a lot of cinematography shorthand, and I put in my shot sizes and my angles, which a lot of comic writers don't do. I mean, there's you can write Marvel method, which is where you just say what, like, you essentially give the artist a breakdown. You say, this has to happen on the page. Here's some temp dialogue, go for it. And then you write the script based on their art. I can't do that because I don't feel I'm a good enough writer to do that. I have to, I do this kind of Daniel Day-Lewis kind of deep dive. And then I hand it to the artist and say, you can ignore all of that.
Right.
But I know that I've done my job. So when Duncan was looking at it, he's like, okay, well, we open with an establishing shot, then we go to a close-up, then we go to an over the shoulder. So I think he could picture what I was trying to do.
Now, of course, if you're using a whole bunch of different artists, which I entirely approve of, incidentally, because of course I think with a lot of British guys in my generation, my sort of comic book gateway drug was 2000 AD. Back in the 80s. And one of the things I used to love about that was all the running strips had rotating artists, sometimes 1 week at a time, and you get these radically different interpretations. I mean, you have like Brian Bolland's Judge Dredd, which is almost entirely photorealistic. And then next week it's Mike McMahon's Judge Dredd, which looks like a cave painting. You know what I mean? It looks like he's drawn it with a burnt stick. And then you get these really savage concepts. It's great. But presumably at some point you need to come up, because this is a new property, as it were. You have, the world of Judge Dredd gets designed by Carlos Esquerra right at the beginning in 77. But presumably you needed to have a kind of a visual Bible for them to work on. So who did you get in to create that?
We winged it.
You winged it.
We did wing it a bit. I mean, I think Alex had a very smart approach, which was basically whoever chronologically was drawing any given character first really got to design that character, and then everyone else would have to play and build their versions from that. Is that right, Alex? Is it?
Yeah. The book was not drawn in page order. It was drawn according to artist schedule. So Pia, who handled around page 115, she was the first one to draw. Well, she and Dylan T started at the same time. So Dylan designed Madi and all of the characters in the J Squad, and Pia designed Ted and Dean, or a couple of other major characters. And what we were very conscious of was that there was a lot of design work to do, and people weren't being paid extra for that. So whereas in film, you get someone like Glyn Dillon and Calum Watt in to design all of the costumes and all the characters and all the environments before you start, and you pay them a bunch of money. Here, we're kind of asking artists to double up. So we wanted to split the design work up among people and also let them bring a lot of their own interests and feelings to it rather than really micromanaging them, because, like I said, it wasn't a film design job.
Mm-hmm. Although, because artistically, there's a hell of a lot of crossover between the two disciplines, because not only are just at the moment all the big movies based on comic books, but of course a lot of movies, particularly action movies, kind of begin life as comic books in the production stage when you do storyboarding. I mean, they kind of have that prior sort of intimate
storyboard artists. I mean, Chris Weston does a lot of storyboards these days. Tanchi Zonchik was on the team for Rogue One doing design work. God, I mean, so many. I think Dylan's done a bunch of design work for things. Yeah.
But I mean, how far along was Madi as a movie concept before it became it was diverted into I mean, Duncan, had you already done much in the way of concept art and character design yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we've done quite a lot. I mean, I will in addition to what you're asking, I'll try and fit in what Craig Edwards here
I was going to try and time
is asking. But it's a funny world making movies, because the higher up the bigger the budgets you're working on, the more rightfully you become beholden to whoever it is whose money it is. Now, Madi was an interesting one in that I was early enough on in my career. I was kind of just finishing off Source Code, which was only my second film, when I teamed up with basically a company who paid me to write my own script, which was wonderful on the one hand, and it put some money in my pocket. And on the other hand, it meant that I was very much locked into doing that film with them. And if it ever happens, it will happen with them, which is great. But it also meant that whatever they were experiencing at the time, and they had done they were working on a couple of other films, the ones that worked out for them and the ones that didn't work out for them kind of had an impact on whether my film was going to happen or not. And unfortunately, they had done a fairly large science fiction film, which hadn't done as well as they had wanted at the time.
Right.
And it kind of put a bit of a damper on the prospects of Madi. So we had actually done a lot of work. We'd done a lot of concept artwork. I'd worked with Weta, actually. I had my first and very wonderful trip to New Zealand was basically for Madi, for me to go down to Weta and actually work with them on a bunch of design work we were doing for what would have been the film version of it. So yeah, there was a fair amount done. But even though there was a fair amount done, I think when Alex and I started working together, there was a lot of ideas that she had, and certainly a lot of ideas that the artists we were working with had, that meant that we were creating something that was different than what the film would be. And I'm all for that, because comics is something that I love and something that I've grown up with. And to be able to work with these people who are so experienced and have such unique takes on how to create how to tell stories, I wanted to buy into that and see what they would do with it, rather than me try and impose what it should be.
So did you arrive with a kind of a wish list of artists, and if so, how many of them did you get? Because there's some people on there, there's some people on the list who wouldn't have been on my wish list, so you got them.
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm mainly from the UK, though I spent a lot of time in the US. So my hit list was primarily UK based, and I don't want to play favorites, but Glenn Fabry and Simon Bisley were absolutely huge for me.
That's a get. That really is. That really is.
So to get, I remember, and I'd actually worked with Glenn. I'd worked with Glenn before, because Glenn and I almost did Mute as a graphic novel before we made the movie, and we'd gotten quite a few pages done before the film kind of overtook it and made that not get finished. So Glenn and I had history, and I really wanted to work with him.
By the way,
what was that, Alex? Say again.
I am trying to convince everybody to put that book out, the Mute graphic novel plus design class. We'll see. We have
Glenn is
get out first.
Yes. We got a question. This looks like a big question coming here from Alan George Meckham. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hi, Duncan. Met you at a con years ago, and you're a true gentleman. You gave me a signed source code poster. My question is this: what advice can you give to someone with no marketing budget? How do we get work out there? Our first book, The Man That Time Forgot, was the biggest sci-fi novel in October 2013. Had good reviews, thankfully, but we've struggled to get that traction with other work since. I've got my own sob stories as regards to this, but we'll go into that in a minute. But never did anything different than we did with the first book. Any advice on how? And then that falls off the edge of the frame. So, yeah. What do you do?
Alex may have an idea on how to promote.
I mean, it's very hard right now because the direct market in the US is extremely difficult. Not only are there issues with Diamond, our previous monopoly distributor, now no longer being a monopoly, and distribution being a little up in the air right now. Comic shops are suffering because of the lockdown. And also for the past few years, DC and Marvel have been shipping so many comic books that stores aren't even able to have, in the US, stores aren't even able to have the entire line of Marvel and DC books. Plus, there are a lot of small new entrants to the market on the monthly side. Sorry, I'm in New York City, so you've got sirens going by. So anybody, like, I have really good friends who have big names who put a monthly book out, and it dies the death. Like, the numbers on monthly books, like, people are just not making money. Like, no one talks about it, but the monthly books that you're making, you know, and like, in some ways, certain publishers admit that. Like, they don't say it out loud, but the books have no advances on them. The publishers take big chunks of film because the only way they make money off this turkey is their Netflix first look deal, because the book sells 2,000 copies in the direct market for issue 1, then 500 for issue 2, so which means it's not even washing its face. So the problem is throughout the industry. My strong feeling is don't waste time with bullshit work. Like, if you don't, like, every book is a struggle. So put out the book that's closest to your heart, write the story, because like none of it's going to sell anyway. Like, just assume it's not going to sell. So don't make a book for other people because you think they'll like it. Make a book for yourself that you really love. And then if it doesn't sell, you'll be like, well, at least I have my vision and the thing I love out there. Don't rely on the direct market. I would strongly start. I mean, if you're looking at adult genre books, there are not a lot of publishers that do them, and you're not going to get in advance. Like YA in middle grade, there's a tremendous increase in the number of imprints in the US who are offering actual livable advances in terms of the big 5 trade publishers to get books out there. There's still a lag for adult genre work. There's Gallery 13 at Simon & Schuster, but that's been having some issues. Honestly, you know, kickstarting it, putting it on the internet, webtoons, like any way you can get it out. What I normally do with my bigger work, and I write like 300-page graphic novels. Like I've just given up on monthlies because I just like to write big fat books. We find a publisher for it. Sometimes we get in advance, sometimes we don't. And then we look at a way to serialize it while we're making it so we don't all go crazy. So it's not like, you know, Duncan's working 10 years on a film, the film finally comes out. He's like somewhere around year 8, he's slowly going a little bit mad. Because you've got this thing, like this great big thing in your head and all this stuff, and no one's seen it, and you just want someone to go, yes, it's nice.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing.
So yeah. I've got one book serializing on my Patreon. I've got another book serializing on Panel Syndicate. You know, issue 2 comes out. Bad Karma issue 2 comes out next week. You know, we've got like 60 pages of reversal up. Both those books have publishers, but the team get this little like shot of attention and validation every time we produce a little bit more of it. We know people are seeing it, and so it makes the task less onerous, which is a way of getting around that like kind of monthly comic thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough, and it's going to get tougher. I really do think some small comics companies are going to go bust.
Well, of course, one of the things about it being the year 2020, which it is that, you know, the big revolution in prose publishing, which happened like 10, 15 years ago, with self-publishing, with, you know, just bumming it up as a Kindle file and seeing if anybody wants it. In the era of the iPad, there is now, I think, more possibility for self-publishing comic books.
Oh, yeah, webtoons, like popular comics on webtoons. Like, everyone's like, oh, I want my book on Comixology. No, you don't. You want it on webtoons. The biggest comic book on webtoons, which is a retelling, it's called Lore Olympus. It's a retelling of the Persephone myth. It has 300 million views. Wow. 300 million. That, you know, that is the entire comic book market in the U.S.
Yeah.
All comic books, all of them in print, got less than this web comic. So, you know, and if you talk to my friends today, and most of them are like, I really like reading web comics on my phone. So you can, you know, you can adapt print comics to web comics. You can do straight web comics. Just don't be a snob about looking outside the way that you read books as a kid. It's not the monthly, like everyone's like, oh, the monthly market's hard. I put my thing on Comixology. Nobody read it. Yeah. So do something else. Like, you can't just sit there and whine about the fact that you're doing the thing that everyone else is doing and it's not working. You need to look outside of that. And I also want to mention Unbound for the UK. I put out my first which is a bit of a like cross-genre thing. Unbound are wonderful. They do graphic novels as well. It is crowdfunding, but they are a proper publisher with editors and copy editors and a design team and a wonderful marketing team. So, and more and more folks from the US are doing that. So if you have a novel idea or a nonfiction or poetry or a graphic novel, I'd strongly suggest getting in touch with Unbound. Their books are universally high quality, and the team is like, I had the best copy editor there I've ever had. I still want to send her like muffins on her birthday because she was so good.
That's excellent. So at what point did you guys decide that this is going to be a Kickstarter project? Was that like obvious from day one, or was it something which occurred to you later on in the process that the way to get this out there was via Kickstarter?
I was very concerned about it. I wasn't sure, but Alex had some experience doing it before. I was like, okay. I mean, Alex knows the reasons why I was concerned. But because of the way we put the book together, I'd actually paid for all of the artists and everyone who was going to work on it up front. So I kind of felt like we were in a slightly different position than those who maybe were looking for the money to try and get something made. I had already paid for it. It was happening whether Kickstarter worked out or not. So Alex very smartly kind of convinced me by saying, well, look, basically we're using it as a shop front. We're selling the book from Kickstarter, but essentially because the book is already going to get made, it's not like we're going out there with our hand out. We're just selling a product.
Yeah, like, oh, you know, if we make this stretch goal, then Glenn Fabry gets $50 a page rather than 25. Like, no. You know, there have been some big Kickstarters where, not necessarily in comics, but elsewhere, where creators have been like, you know, like basically everyone working for the creators working for exposure, and then they get all the money from the Kickstarter. The creator gets, and it's like, no. So, and also like we needed this work done, and the best way to get work done is pay people.
Okay.
Don't until the pages come in, but pay them, and then they prioritize your work and they get it done, and they're happy about it. Paying people is great. Like, I highly recommend, like, anyone who's thinking about doing books for exposure, don't do books for exposure. You know, find some way to pay people, even if, like, it means the book's going to take a lot longer because you can only afford 5 pages a month.
Absolutely. And he's back with another cushion. I was wondering what that is.
It was my dog barking outside, so I just had to let her in.
We may have a cat emergency at my end. We'll see if that happens or not. No, it's trying to. One of the things about, you know, which was, you know, the great controversy about crowdfunding when it first became a thing, which I guess is like 10 years ago now, is crowdfunding begging? No, it's not. It's buying and selling. It's just doing it in a different way. It's just rather than, you know, getting the money from a third party in the hope of making it back from the end user, you get the money from the end users. And if you can't get the money from the end users, it means that there was never a market for the thing you're doing in the first place. So, you know, I think it's, I approve of crowd. Well, I've got a Patreon. I love crowdfunding. It's keeping me alive right now.
The Kickstarters, you know, I've talked about how hard it is to market. It's always hard to sell books. And one advantage of Kickstarter that I saw, I mean, we also hit at a perfect time when comic shops were closed. And there was like not a lot else happening. Yes. And then we came on like, here's like comics are looking down at the moment. Here's a big, exciting project with a cool person and like lots of amazing artists who aren't in other books right now. So our timing turned out to be excellent. Not that we intended to. We would have preferred not to have a pandemic, but alas.
There's a lot of planning to make that happen.
Yes.
Yeah, like, we had to ship the snakes to China and everything.
Yes. Sometimes it pays to be a supervillain. I think this one might be a quick one. We have a question from Jennifer Gordon. Is this going to be in any way related to the TV show Once Upon a Time?
No, nor is it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah. I thought that would be fairly simple. We have a question. Oh, this could be a fun one.
Our effects are much better than Once Upon a Time's.
We've already had one from Craig Edwards, but this is quite a nice little one. I quite like this. Alex, you mentioned the music you've been listening to on the Kickstarter. Have you thought about providing a recommended soundtrack to listen along to with the book?
I mean, Duncan and I could very easily do this at some point. Yeah, like I'd like to. Like I just need the Kickstarter to kind of finish because I need to lower some pages because a lot is happening. But you know, I love making soundtracks. I make soundtracks for everything. I'm that girl. So with a little bit of encouragement from Duncan, we could do a collaborative Spotify playlist, and then we could do a Perturbator.
People can nominate their own Spotify playlists, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, get imaginative.
Usually with these, when I do a new playlist, I go on Twitter and I ask for recommendations. I say, you know, like, here's the theme. Like, I'm doing my anime playlist, or I'm doing like synthwave, but not hard synthwave, because I've got like a dark wave soundtrack already. Yeah. And then people suggest
this would be my challenge, Alex, is that if you're going to do it, you have to use local bands for the places on the for the places that the road trip goes.
Great idea. Great idea.
I mean, what's this you? This is a we project, Duncan. This is
yes. I never think of people joining in. It's all good. It's all good. Okay, we have a question from Ricardo Alejandro Serrano Denise. Duncan, what do you think the common thread is through the 3 stories in the Mooniverse? Is there anything you definitely wanted to make sure was present in each story?
I mean, I think Alex actually was the one who really put a finger on it because I hadn't quite wrapped my head around it. But I think there is an ongoing thread throughout the 3 stories about people who probably don't think they're ready for responsibility, and who are maybe slightly outcasts in their own universes, who find themselves suddenly becoming responsible for something and having to work out how to deal with it and successfully navigating that challenge. That seems to be a recurring theme. I think that's some pretty transparent psychology, therapy that I'm doing for myself.
I was going to say, that sounds like the story that a newish father would accidentally come up with.
Yeah, but I started 10 years ago before I had kids, but I seem to be continually thinking, am I ready? Am I ready?
Yeah. Well, it could have been worse. That's why David Lynch wrote Eraserhead. Anyway. Could be saying altogether worse things about your psychology. One of the things I really loved about Moon, and it's sort of less obvious in Mute, but it was really... So the first time I met Duncan was at a party in London that Neil Gaiman was throwing at Christmas, I think 2007. And this first time, and you came in with this great bundle of Polaroids going, look at my moon base. Look at I've built my moon base. you were so happy with your moon base. And
that was a bad.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, as per usual, I was putting the cart before the horse, and we built the moon base before we had the financing for the film, which probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world. But Moon was an extraordinarily weird concurrence of events.
Yeah.
Where we decided if we don't just get started, because it was Britain, it was a small film and it was sci-fi, and no one thought it would actually happen. We thought, well, if we start doing it, everyone will believe it. Everyone will believe that it's an actual movie.
Yes.
So we started building sets and hiring actors and putting all this stuff into place. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, of course we'll give you the money to finish the film. You're obviously making the film, so
yes.
you get the money to finish the film. I don't recommend that as a practice to get movies made. It will definitely kick you in the butt if you're not very lucky.
Yeah, it's kind of
There's on how to make books, because a lot of people spend too long waiting for permission to begin. They're waiting. They're sending their pitch to publishers, and they're not gonna. It's almost like they don't feel like they're real creators until a publisher offers them a deal. But you just have to go and make the book and then get it out there somehow. And if it's you're photocopying it and handing it out, that's fine. But like that's how you sell novels. You write a manuscript first. That's how you get your first graphic novel out there. You start with a 10-page story, get that illustrated, maybe get it in an anthology, maybe just hand it out at conventions. But if you are constantly waiting for everyone else to tell you can begin, you will never begin.
Absolutely.
Because everyone's more interested in the stuff that they can already look at and say, oh, this is great. Yeah, we'll get involved in this.
Yeah, people only want to help you when you're winning and don't need help anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Everyone thinks baby writers and baby creators think that someone's gonna swoop in and pick them up and dub them and off you go now, and hand them money and make it easier. It never gets easier.
It's like that, the whole rock star thing. That as soon as you're rich, everybody gives you everything for free anyhow. But one of the things I loved about Moon was it had that kind of, I don't know whether it's a deliberately kind of almost retro 80s sci-fi kind of feel to it. It had a solidness that sci-fi at the time has kind of regained, but at the time didn't really have. Everything at the time was very heavily CG. And one of the things I loved about Moon was it had that kind of almost kind of Space 1999 look to the interiors, and particularly the miniatures, particularly those big moon trucks stomping about. And I remember thinking they had that real kind of Derek Meddings kind of solidity to them. You know what I mean? And
Gavin Rothery, who was the concept artist on Moon, had a huge amount to do with how that particular aesthetic for the moon base and for the rovers and things looked, and how most of the film looked. I mean, Tony Noble, who's the production designer, worked very closely with Gavin because Gavin already had such a beautiful look worked out. Gavin himself actually has his first feature film coming out very soon. I think there's a trailer up already called for Archive. So it's well worth, if you like that aesthetic and that look, it's well worth looking out for the Archive trailer, because you'll get a more refined and even more impressive version of the aesthetic we were going for on Moon.
Ricardo Alejandro Serrano Denis says, thank you for saying my entire name, Denare Ricardo. Thomas Yanka, no, the answer, I think that's pronounced, says, will you be getting Clint to do any music for Madi?
If it were to have been made as a movie, I'm sure that he would have been the guy that I go to. Because and Mute both had scores done by Clint. So, yeah, he would have done Madi too. If Clint is a very busy man and a very in-demand man, but if he ever wanted to have a little putter about on his keyboard after reading the Madi book, which I'm sure he'll be getting a copy of, he's more than welcome to put something out there.
We've got a question there from Michaela Dietz, I think, or they asked possibly. First of all, congratulations to Duncan and Alex on the Kickstarter campaign. Do you have the badges or confirmation of a print artist for the next stretch goal yet?
Yes, it's Erica Henderson, and the badges are on my email this morning, but I haven't looked through them.
Whee!
I haven't seen them. I can't wait.
I'll send them on. Just I had Monday morning stuff.
Oh, hey, no, and today, as we both know, is the back to business day, where supposedly we may be seeing some more work from Bisley today as well. Very exciting.
Fantastic. Well, that's one of the fun things about the Kickstarter and the crowdfunding thing, is you get this kind of little gang mentality going. You get this kind of sense of membership, of club, of participation. I mean, that's one of the things, because I've got, and thank heavens I have a Patreon thing up and running, because I'm a comedian most of the time, and all that is just gone. And there's only the live stuff, and there's only the online stuff which exists. And thankfully, I've been doing a lot of online stuff about 3 years now, so I'm managing to just about keep afloat. But one of the things I love about the Patreon thing, and I try and maintain it with my own Patreon, is that kind of sense, that kind of gang mentality, that kind of club mentality. I mean, do you find that that's helped keep you guys motivated on this?
It's certainly something I've always appreciated, and I've used. I joined Twitter back in 2009. Mm-hmm. Because I was desperately, concerned that no one was going to ever know about Moon, and that the only way that anyone would ever think to go see Moon is if I personally put it in their hands. Yeah. So that's why I got on Twitter. Is literally I was trying to tell people, go and see this film I've just made. Please, somebody go see the film I've just made. We spent so much time in the theater. Please see my film. And so that mentality, I've maintained through everything I've done, even if the budgets have spiraled and I'm working on big studio films. I can't help it. I want to know that there are people that I've personally tried to get to watch the things that I'm working on, just because it seems like that's what you need to do. I mean, it isn't really, but I love doing it and it feels right. And I want people to feel like I care, that they care. And hopefully they'll, over time I've kind of developed this group of people who really seem to, be interested in what I'm doing, and it makes me feel like what I'm doing is worth it.
I mean, that was actually one of the reasons I suggested Kickstarter to Duncan, because he's so good at going directly to the fans, that I thought it would be a process he'd enjoy and would be actually quite successful, because he had such an active rapport with his fan base. And unfortunately, none of us can be, Thomas Pynchon or J.D. Salinger anymore and just fuck off to a cabin and not speak to anyone. I wish, but actually I quite enjoy chatting. I've made a lot of friends, friends with Duncan over there. Last stretch goal, it looks like it's going to be J.H. Williams drawing the print. He likes the direction. It's just going to come in a little bit late. It'll come in August, but because it's a print, it doesn't really matter.
And I think it's worth pointing out that Twitter is still full of good people. Obviously it has a reputation of being full of intolerant assholes, and that reputation is by no means entirely undeserved. But I'm always, and every now and again, it always makes me sad when one of the good guys goes, right, I can't take this place anymore, and drops out. I just feel like, no, I want to lay claim to the damn place. I want to, I think the good people still vastly outnumber the jerks on Twitter. And I don't think we should seed that ground. I think we should seed CEDE that ground. I think we should stand our ground and lay claim to the place, because I think, yeah, I mean, I've made lots of great friends over Twitter. I think it's a great, and just over the net in general, I think it's a great way of getting things going. So, what's the next big announcement that we should be awaiting? Do you have a definite print date? I mean, that's the question.
I mean, we want to, like, assuming Thought Bubble goes ahead, we wanted to launch at Thought Bubble, and I would go out, and Duncan, if he's free, would go out as well.
Thought Bubble, is that a convention?
Yeah, it's up in Harrogate, so it's
okay, good.
And we don't have a specific print date yet. We'll do that as soon as I have all of the art in, and it just becomes my problem to letter all of it. We're in really good shape. Like 75% of the book is done, and I know everybody else is working.
So you're not going to actually have anything go out in public until the whole thing is ready to go. It's not going to be like like a monthly book where it's getting written and drawn as it goes out.
No, it'll come out. I mean, I believe we're set to be, giving this book out to people in November. So,
so it's going to come out in a single volume. Yeah.
Yeah, big chunky volume, and the sort of the deluxe edition has got quite a lot of extra content in it as well, and extra pieces of artwork. And I mean, one of the things that I did actually before I started working with Alex, is I ran a poll on Twitter where I was asking people to kind of submit to me who they thought were the most interesting and exciting comic book artists that they were familiar with, so that I could expand my breadth of knowledge on who was out there. And then what we ended up doing is I basically hired 4 different artists to do 1 page of my scripting of the book, just for really for me to get a sense of what it would be like to work with different artists, and to see how different the styles would be when sort of laid next to each other. Mm-hmm. And it was very cool. And those pages, which aren't part of the book, will be in there, and a lot of other artwork that we've done along the way.
The bonus features.
The deluxe edition is only on the Kickstarter.
Right.
And the Kickstarter runs until Thursday night, so you only have like 4 more days to get involved in it. I mean, the basic paperback is $29, which is all 260 pages of the story. Then there's a hardback, which is $49.
That's what I'm in at. Yeah.
So the paperback is a Duncan Fagretto and Jacob Phillips cover, beautiful wrap cover. The hardback has a cover by Yuko Shimizu, who's a wonderful New York-based Japanese-American illustrator. And the hardback has like about 30 pages of extra stuff. And then there's this deluxe in a slipcover that's going to be like, it's going to be over 300 pages by the time we get Duncan Fagretto's thumbnails on the actual script, which is amazing. He's like, nice. And R.M. Guerra's roughs, my own horrible chicken scratch breakdowns, going from screenplay to actual finished page, so there's going to be a lot of really fun stuff. But
deep in thought.
Frozen. I think she might have frozen.
Lots of stuff, and there's some great concept artwork that went on there as well.
Yeah, that kind of ties into
we got a bit stagnant
a little while ago from Eriko Fukuda. I think, what was the most difficult thing about putting all the artists' work together? I think we may have temporarily lost Alex for a minute.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll come back on. Here she is.
There you go.
Spectrum, New York's best internet.
We had a question from Eriko Fukuda asking what was the most difficult thing about putting all the artists' work together. I mean, was it? I guess.
Rather than difficult, I'd say the exciting decisions that we got to make were which artist goes best with which part of the story. And Alex already gave a really good example of how the casino piece works because of the artist who was working on that. But there were many decisions where there were certain, where there are action beats, or whether there are locations, or where different artists really played better to different parts of the story.
Yeah, and I mean Dylan Teague in the beginning, simply because his art's so beautiful, and because he's British, we could say draw Camden Market, and it would look like anyone who looks at that would know, like, that's London Underground, that's the Northern Line, Camden Station, you know, that's Camden Market, but still in the future. So he wasn't, you know, in Nebraska working from photo rep, having never seen this environment. You know, another issue was like figuring out which artists, if an artist was particularly perfect for a section, how that influenced the choices of the artists around them, because you couldn't have artists with two similar styles.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking in terms of really sort of the flow of it.
But they were kind of too similar to other artists for the open spot. I mean, there are about 3 people I would have really loved to have on the book that weren't able to do it due to schedule or time. But then there were also a lot of other artists we long listed that just, you know, they didn't end up, not that they're, you know, they didn't end up being the best fit for a particular section. And we got our number 1 choice.
Right.
We were pretty lucky. We got our number 1 choice pretty much for the entire book.
That's great. That's amazing. I'm really stoked about it. So is this it for the Mooniverse? Is this like the end of the Mooniverse? Or
I don't know. I mean, I think it certainly feels like a completion of something.
Right.
And I don't know where, you know, where things might pop up again. The thing is, I have a great difficulty of seeing the future without immediately gravitating towards the one that I've been portraying in Moon, Mute, and Madi. It's kind of like when I think of the future, that's where my head goes.
That's your character writer, and you don't want to redo all the environment building because that's the stuff you don't actually like doing.
Right. I think, you know, I doubt that that's the last I'll ever be doing of near future storytelling. And if I end up doing near future, you know, it may be in a world that feels very familiar. I don't know if I would ever be bringing any of the characters back. I think that part of it's probably done. Yeah.
They all have such nice conclusive endings. You know, bringing them back would be weird in a way.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that in itself is quite a teasing concept. Do any of the actual characters from Moon and Mute show up in Madi?
Yeah. So there is. There is, but a very it's weird because it's a very peripheral character in Mute, who is actually a fairly major character in Madi. So I had always when we made Moon, the idea of these 3 things being connected wasn't really kind of that substantial yet. But as I was making the Mute movie, I did know that I wanted this character to play a part in Once Upon a Time in the Future if I ever got the chance to tell that story. So that character definitely becomes much more substantial.
Well, it's because on the one hand, it's sort of this, you know, that there are kind of visual and thematic crossover between Mute and a lot of. I think one of the things that's kind of weirdly ironic about Mute taking as long as it did is that it's a kind of a spiritual sequel to Blade Runner. It ended up coming up bang on top of the actual sequel to Blade Runner, which is a bit weird. I mean, and I suppose Blade Runner in particular is such a massive thing to try and get around if you're doing it in the near future. One thing I'm intrigued though by reading up on the synopsis of Madi is something which doesn't get brought up in sci-fi an awful lot of the time, which is who's paying for all this stuff. And I like the idea of, without giving anything away because this is on the Kickstarter page, one of the dilemmas of the central bunch of characters is these are cybernetically enhanced people who are no longer working for the people who cybernetically enhanced them and are having to pay for the upkeep of their cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah, exactly.
Why has that never come up before? You know, who's paying for this stuff and how?
Especially in America, where everyone has to pay for healthcare, and it's you know, I love stories where there's a lot of basic operational logic of how.
She's stammering again.
Oh, we might have lost Alex again.
But no, I mean that's something which I thought about. You know,
well, I mean, I think. Obsolescence is definitely something which interests me in technology. Is, you know, what do you do with the tech that you don't really need anymore, which doesn't really fit in anymore?
Yeah, and it's part of you, you know.
the more integrated it becomes and the more dependent we are on it before we find out it's obsolescent. How do we deal with those? How do we deal with those impacts?
One of my favorite little factoids about that is that just in the last days of the space shuttle program, before that was finally put to bed, and it turned out that basically having reusable spaceships is actually a bit of a false economy because the technology on board them was obsolete so quickly. And a lot of the onboard systems of the space shuttles were running on like 7-inch floppy drives right up until when they decommissioned them, and they were literally having to send NASA scientists to computer fairs and car boot sales to try and buy up vintage equipment to have spares for the space shuttle. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Yeah. Are we supposed to be wrapping this up on the hour? Is that the way this is supposed to work, do we think?
Because I think so.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm happy to keep chatting as long as you guys are available. One person did ask on the Twitter about French editions. We are talking to 2 French publishers and 1 Spanish publisher about foreign rights, and we do have a foreign rights sales agent, though those editions would not likely come out until middle of next year because of translations and so forth. Right.
Yes. So that's just going to take a little longer. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I'm going to, Duncan, this is Chris for you.
Yeah.
Where are you up to with Rogue Trooper? Totally off topic, but where are you up to with Rogue Trooper?
Out to actors. So that's where we are on it. We'll see what happens. I mean, to be honest, these times are not making it easy for us to kind of come up with a definitive plan on how we're going to move forward. Also, my wife is immunosuppressed, so we have to have some really deep thinkings. We have to really work out and consider how we're going to go about whatever it is that I have to do for work next. One of the reasons why this graphic novel has actually been incredibly exciting and liberating for me is if it goes well, and it seems to be going well, it becomes a potential way for me to work for a little while until we have a vaccine or until we work out how we're going to safely navigate these pandemic times, because I can't, I've got little kids, I've got a wife who's more at risk. I need to work out how and where I would make a movie in this world, and I haven't quite worked that out yet.
Right. I mean, animation also, and someone keeps asking you about video games, and I know you love video games. So there are ways. Like, I do 4 different things because I can, and because doing like cross-platform stuff is fun. So I can definitely see that evolving with you doing a short animation or working on a video game for a while, because that's also stuff you can do from home.
Yeah, to that point, there is a project which I've just finished the script for, just submitted it to the one person who could basically cut that project off, who has just said that they like the project very much. So that may be something that we might be able to do as an animated film. So we're gonna go to the next stage of it now and see what happens with that. But that could be. I'd love to be able to talk about that soon too, but we'll see.
Well, we're having to be a bit more creative about all of this. I mean, I've been doing online streaming gigs just for my patrons. I've done a bunch of online comedy clubs. We're all having to be a bit. I mean, the one I heard just recently is one of my favorite TV shows is The Blacklist with James Spader. And apparently they were within, they got halfway through making the season finale when they had to go into lockdown. And they're finishing it off as animation.
They finished it. Unfortunately, they used a really crappy previs studio, and it hurts my soul as someone who's directed animation and written animation. Right. Like, I heard about that. I was like, yay, that's so cool. Awesome. Let's do that. And then I saw it really like.
Is it not good? I'm not seeing it yet. I mean, I'm a big fan of the shows. I'm a big fan of James Spader.
It could have been better. I appreciate what they did. They needed to talk to anyone who'd actually dealt with animation studios to do something, not just like literally it was straight previs.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a big grim. I mean, one of the things that is going to be, I should have got the guy who did all the noir bits for Spider-Verse. That would work. But one thing that is going to be interesting is I'm wondering how long the pandemic has to last before it actually has not just an effect on production, before it has an effect on narrative. Because at the moment, what we're still seeing is, okay, we're not going to the movies, but the movies are rocking up on Netflix and Amazon and everything. We're still watching movies, but the movies are still set in the world where people go out and meet each other. You know what I mean?
Oh, no. Yeah.
I'm wondering how long before people actually have to start writing movies set in the world we're currently living in, so that people don't just sit there going, yeah, but that's just not the way it is anymore. You know, I'm just wondering how long that's going to have to last.
Well, given the amount of denial I've seen, even in New York City, driving along the west side and seeing the picnics like along the Hudson from the Heights on down, like a lot of people are still living like that. You know, there are others who are like, "Yikes, we have children, we can't do this." And then there's Reddit "Am I the asshole?" posts about women getting mad that they took their 9-month baby to a reopened Starbucks and the coffee grinder woke the baby. And I'm like, why are you taking your 9-month-old baby to Starbucks?
Yeah. And I know this is the crazy thing, because obviously, you know, in this country we had the whole scandal about Dominic Cummings, the guy who's basically the unofficial prime minister, because our actual prime minister is a lazy idiot and delegated everything to this unelected advisor who is actually running the country. The fact that he drove his kid, when he already believed he was infected with the virus, drove his kids right up to the other end of the country to dump them with their grandparents. And what really alarmed me about that was this feeling that went through the country of, well, that's it, the rules don't apply anymore. If the people imposing the rules can't be bothered to follow the rules or consider themselves above the rules, and the rules don't apply anymore. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's not about rules. It's about a virus. And the virus is still out there, even if the rich and powerful are being jerks about it. You know, it's not about rules.
Okay, I'm going to steer us off politics for a second, because Eriko Fukuda is asking about the Japanese edition, and I'm curious, what's going to happen with the Japanese edition? That sounds exciting.
I know some folks at Kodansha, and I'm going to have a word with them. You know, we're very dependent on publishers approaching our agent for foreign rights. So if, though I still need to email my friend Ben at Kodansha. I've done a lot of work with them. I did a Ghost in the Shell thing with Massamune Shirow.
And I'm assuming, is that something that would be staggered? That would be staggered anyway, right? So the English version comes out, everyone says, wow, this is really great. This deserves being seen in other places. And then publishers from other countries and other languages will come and say, you know, they'll read the book and they'll do their version.
A few proactive publishers.
Oh, Alex, we lost you again.
Give it a minute.
I can guess where she was going to go, though, which was, I would imagine a few proactive publishers will probably jump in ahead if they know the people involved and like the look of the project. But so that makes sense. And if Alex has some connections, I guess that might answer your question, Eriko. I hope it happens. I would absolutely, you know, that would be a dream of mine for it to be released in Japan and South Korea and China. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, I need to finish all the lettering, and then those pages would go to any foreign publisher, and they pick the layer of English letters off, and they replace them with the natural language there.
Right.
So yeah, it'll happen. Usually they're released a year after.
I mean, presumably the roaring start that the Kickstarter got off to, I mean, presumably that must have attracted people's attention within the comic book industry. The fact that you achieved your target within the first couple of hours. I mean, I'm not to suggest that means that, you know, DC are going to sort of make you an offer for the whole thing or anything, but it's just that presumably is the best start possible with regards to, you know, foreign publishing rights and everything.
And in general profile, like, you know, it was very much a marketing thing to try to get the book on the radar screen of people who don't necessarily go to comic shops, but like us, grew up on 2000 AD or Commando, or, you know, has a copy of Akira in their bookshelf. And it's like, oh, well, I'm well disposed towards graphic novels and comic books, or I love sci-fi, or I love Duncan, or like for about a dozen people, I love Alex. I'll buy this thing. You know, I'll pre-order this thing because there's no other books out at the minute, and this looks quite exciting. So it achieved that goal of getting us a lot of notice outside of comic books. Because comic books is a small enough pool that, you know, you can get a lot of press within the comic book industry fairly easily. And we wanted people, but there's a much larger book market outside that, and that's really what we wanted to hit. That's another reason we're putting out as one big chunk, so that, you know, eventually it can be racked spine out in physical bookstores, and you still get this big fat old like 300-page spine that says Madi in big letters, as opposed to like a tiny little comic book thing.
So, Duncan, is it going to confuse everybody if you think you're not going to do anything directly in the Moon universe? Is it going to confuse anybody if you do something which is completely unconnected with these stories, but also has a forward title starting with N?
Yeah, so I guess I won't be making that MASH sequel then.
Yeah. But just I don't know, story called Nick. You know, just.
Although I kind of did agree. Yeah, no, I'll be staying away from that. I think I'm trying to think of the things that I've got the other things I've got working on in the background. Yeah, none of them are 4-letter M
starting with M.
titled movies. Staying away from that.
Yeah, I can't be the first person to notice that, surely. Are we about wrapping this up, do we think? Is after the hour is rolled over?
If that's okay with everyone,
if that's okay with everyone, if anybody's got any serious objections, comments on now? I think we're done. Duncan, lovely to see you.
Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you for everyone who was watching.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Alex, I'm going to get on Mike Stockbury's case, and we're going to write that 13th century heist movie.
We are writing this. Like I'm telling you, I've done the research. Okay.
Yeah.
We're get
great
to I have it all here, and I finished my other. What?
Yes.
Can I jump in one quick? Somebody just said Kerry Badley said you will have to get Chesney Hawkes to perform.
Of course.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually perform live. He is online doing things like that. But what I was going to tell you is actually Madi, even though it's in graphic novel form, does have a moment where I am the one and only place. So I need to talk to Alex about exactly how we're going to do that.
I'm there for it. Car radio, maybe. I don't know. But yes,
it's in an elevator. It's in an elevator towards the end of the movie.
For no other reason, now we all have to get the book to find Chesney. Where's Chesney? Madi, Once Upon a Time in the Future, or Where's Chesney?
But everyone, thank you. If you haven't checked out the Kickstarter, please do. You can download these glorious, just download it for Dylan's art, which is fabulous.
Oh yeah.
Tons of.
It's free. You can get 17 pages of a beautiful, really cool book for free. So you might as well get it.
Absolutely. And when's the Kickstarter finish? How long have they got?
It's Thursday, so people need to get their statement.
So you've got 3 days if you want to get on board with the Kickstarter, and failing that, then you're just going to have to sit on Spilkers till November like the rest of the human race. Duncan, Alex, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's been watching along. And yes, we'll see you on Twitter and Facebook and elsewhere.
Bye.
So long.
Bye.